Okay, in this video module, what we're going to do is take a look at selections in Doom Edit. Now, we've already talked a little bit about some simple selections through some of the video modules we've done, but we're going to review those and get a little bit more involved. So we'll start out, of course, with the simple select, deselect, and multiple select. And then we'll take a look at, of course, how to deselect all. From there, though, we're going to look at selecting stacked objects. How do you deal with selecting something that's on the bottom of a stack or in the middle of a stack of brushes? Selecting brush faces, that's another important one. So far, we've seen that when we select a brush, we select all of the faces on the brush. Well, when we get to more advanced level design, we're going to obviously need to select one face or just a few faces at a time for texturing purposes, and we'll take a look at how we go about doing that. And then from there, we're going to look at the special selection types, the ability to select complete tall, select partial tall, select touching, and select inside. And these are some really nice features that are available in Doom Edit for selecting brushes under some unique circumstances, if you will. So Logan, let's go ahead and start out with just looking at simple selections, even though we've talked about them. Since this video is about selections, maybe somebody skipped that video in the past. So let's start with some simple brushes. Go ahead and build some stuff.
Well, before we can select something, we need something there to select. So I'm just going to drag out a few really simple brushes, maybe one next to it, and I'll deselect that so I can start drawing the next brush, and maybe one that goes over those but is moved up some, so on top of. I'm also going to move my cam view up a little bit so I can keep those in view, something like that. So there we have a few brushes, and you'll notice the last one I built is currently selected.
Maybe make a little one that's right in the middle of the one that you've got right now currently selected. So move him over where he's right about there.
So right.
Yeah, and he's up underneath. That'll help. I mean, I know we can demonstrate with the other two, but this will work really well.
Okay, so we've got a handful of brushes, and if you're creating stuff, one of the first things you'll probably need to know how to do is deselecting, because after the first brush, you're going to need to be able to deselect it and create the next one.
Otherwise, you'll start scaling the brush out.
That's right. So the global deselect all is simply escape. Hitting escape will make sure that anything you've got currently selected is no longer selected. So with nothing selected, that means dragging is going to be drawing a new brush.
That's right.
So, okay, back to actually selecting things. We've seen in past videos that we can hold Shift and click on something to select it. Now, if that one object is left selected and we continue Shift-clicking other objects, they get added to the selection. So, as I go through and click on objects, it adds or actually removes. Because once you're working with a selection, you can click to basically toggle each individual object.
And we can go ahead and point out as well, you don't have to click like right on the lines of the brush either.
Right, you can click anywhere inside the entire thing. It's looked at in the editor as a solid object, so you can click anywhere on that object.
Okay.
So that's simple selection, simple deselection, global deselection. Now we want to take a look at selecting stacked objects. You noticed just a second ago as we were selecting this brush and trying to select the one below it, we can't. If we hold Shift, we just toggle that one, and we can never access the one underneath it. In order to access objects that are stacked on top of each other from an orthogonal view, we can hold Alt-Shift and then click. And this will cycle through everything that's currently stacked. So everything that lays underneath the mouse right now, if I hold Alt-Shift and click, will go through all the selected objects. This is really useful when you're starting to build levels that have walls and floors, and you want to be able to select the floor brush from the top view because it's easiest to see from the top view, but you can't. The ceiling's in the way. Just hold Alt-Shift and start clicking until you get down to the floor itself. So that's stack selection.
Okay, so now I guess we can go ahead and take a look at the faces.
Alright, so looking at an individual brush, like say for example this brush here, you notice that when we're selecting out brushes in this case, we always select the entire thing, and all faces get selected. So if we were to apply a different texture, that gets applied to the entire thing. And when you're texturing, at some point you're going to need to select individual faces and apply different textures to them. To do this, we use Control-Shift. If you Control-Shift and click on a brush in the cam view, you'll notice we can grab individual faces. And holding Control-Shift will select one face at a time. If you want to do a multi-face selection, hold Control-Alt-Shift, and then we can add or remove from that selection. So there we could go and grab maybe just those two, set them to black for a second, and you can see we've textured part of it and left part of it black. Or Shift select the entire thing, put the entire texture back.
Very good.
So that's how you go about selecting individual faces on a brush.
Okay, so far, selection's very simple. Now let's get into something that's, well, quite interesting. Let's take a look at some of the special selections that are available to us up on our toolbar.
Right, if we look back to the toolbar, we see we have this group of buttons which all deals with selecting. And not just selecting, but selections that are based from a brush, where a brush is used to give focus to an area so that you can select things within it.
It's used kind of like a special marquee. Could be like a 2D marquee or a 3-dimensional marquee select as well.
Depending on which type of select you use.
Exactly.
So the first one we're going to take a look at is select, or just complete to all, which will select this. Well, I guess you can think of this one as the 2D marquee. If I deselect all my brushes and I draw out a new one, that goes, say, right over that area. So looking in the top view, I have one brush that's completely inside this new brush. Now, at the moment, we were looking at this as a 2D only view. The actual Z of the brush
ignore your camera view.
is irrelevant. So, if you're looking at it from a 2D view, we have one brush completely encompassed and one brush partially encompassed. If we do a complete tall, our selection, the brush that was used for the marquee gets deleted, and only the brush that was completely inside is selected. Ones that were just touching or within the area of that brush but not completely aren't selected. So I can hit, well, I guess that's pretty much complete tall. You have to, it's based on a 2D orthogonal view, so if we switch to front, it'll be based from that view instead. So if I was to drag out a similar scenario where I have this brush entirely and these brushes not, do a complete tall, we get only the one. This time based from the front view.
Well, actually two, since there's...
Well, true, because those are directly behind each other. But that's select complete tall. The next one we're going to take a look at is select touching. So let me actually take this guy and move him back in, or move him down a little, so that he's on the same level as those. So you can see he is in fact touching those. As a matter of fact, he's touching all of them. So with this brush, if we hit select touching, the brush remains selected. Notice that this time it's not deleted. It remains selected, and everything touching it gets selected. So if I was to grab maybe that guy and move him up out of the way so he's not touching anymore, then grab this guy, select touching, only the ones actually touching it get selected. So very simple and kind of handy if you're working with a like a set of brushes that you want to grab. Do select touching, maybe region them off, or do whatever you need to. So the next one we're going to look at is select partial tall. This is the same principle where the brush itself is looked at as a 2D marquee, except instead of only selecting things that are completely inside of it, it'll grab anything it goes over, even just a little bit. So if I was to do a select partial tall, I grab both brushes, because just part of this brush was within my marquee brush.
And of course, it deleted out your selection brush as well.
Right, it behaves the same as complete tall.
That's right, complete tall.
So the last one we're going to take a look at is select inside. And this one is 3D dependent. This one takes the brush and takes anything that is inside of it. And it follows the rules of the complete style select, where anything that's selected has to be entirely inside of it. So if I look at this and top and front, you'll see I have the one brush that's completely inside and one brush that's not, though it is being touched. If I do a select inside, then that brush gets selected. It's like a 3D marquee. You could look at it as 3D complete marquee select,
right,
if you will. So that's pretty much the covers the more advanced selections, or the toolbox buttons that utilize selection.
Yeah, that's about it. I mean, it's a real simple video, just taking a look at simple selects, deselects, and multi-selects, and the global deselect all, which everyone knows is the escape key by now. We took a look at how we can select stacked objects. And then we talked about selecting brush faces, both individually and, of course, multiple brush face selections. Then we talked about the special selections that were available on the toolbar with the select complete tall, select partial tall, select touching, and select inside. So with that, that's going to wrap up this video.